So it has been quite a while since I uploaded a video to my YouTube channel. And part of the reason being is I had some very serious PC issues. If you've been following me or are a subscriber to the channel, then you have seen my custom PC and the different versions that it has gone through. It's gone through four now, to be precise, here in the past 2 months. What I recently did is I decided to upgrade my CPU, and I also decided to upgrade a few extra components such as custom cables, an extra hard drive, an M.2, and so on and so on. What I didn't expect happening was all the problems that kind of came with these upgrades that I just decided to do. The PC was working fine, and I dropped in a new processor, and what ended up happening is that processor went bad. And going through the entire process of trying to figure out what exactly had gone wrong, I just basically decided or declared that my motherboard had died. So the PC itself was going through some serious power cycles. And by power cycles, I mean I couldn't go from BIOS, post, and then into Windows. When it got to the point where it was trying to load the Windows bootloader, the PC would shut off, post again, go straight, to Windows load screen and then turn back off and reboot again. And it was doing this over and over and over. So two things I decided: it's either power supply or it's got to be motherboard, because I can get into the BIOS, I can see every component. It registers my RAM, it registers VGA. There's no issues as far as that goes. Even the CPU registered properly in BIOS, but it still wouldn't go into Windows. So I RMA'd my motherboard and I bought a new one because I didn't feel like waiting forever and a day to get my Gigabyte board back. So I ended up buying an Asus Crosshair Hero 7 for my Ryzen 9 3900X. And as soon as I assembled the PC again and put the loop back together and I thought I had everything figured out, same problem persisted. I could not go from the BIOS to the bootloader and load into Windows. So I went, oh great. I've tested everything else. I mean, before I even decided the motherboard went bad, I took the RAM sticks out and I tried booting with one stick of RAM. I put the RAM modules or DIMM modules into a second PC that I have that I know works, and it booted up fine. I even took my card out and put it in the second PC. It worked. I even took a second power supply that I know works and tried to boot my system, and the same problems persisted. So I've narrowed out everything except for the motherboard and the CPU. Being that the CPU was visible in the BIOS, I didn't think the CPU itself had an issue, but turns out it was a CPU. It was the last thing that I could think of that I didn't swap out for something else. So I went back to the place that I purchased it, and thankfully Amazon.com has a really nice return policy. Got a replacement, dropped in the new CPU, and lo and behold, weeks later, the thing boots right up with no issues. So after I do all these rebuilds based off of, I think it's I thought it was the motherboard, did a rebuild, CPU died, did another rebuild. Then it comes down to my pump reservoir decided to break. And I had an Intermax Neo changer. And the Intermax Neo changer Intermax Neo changer has a very terrible reputation for starting to leak right near the RGB ring at the top. So the plastic pieces and the ring up top started to crack, and I noticed a bunch of air bubbles coming up while I was playing games one day, and just flipped the thing off right away and looked around and was able to find some puddles. And I started getting a nice little pool down there at the bottom of the pump res. I turned the PC around, look at the back, and it actually had dripped and was this far away from touching my SATA connector that happened to not be connected to anything. I'm sure you guys are aware that SATA power plugs. There's, sometimes 3, 4, 5 SATA power ports on the one wire that comes from the power supply. Well, on the first two, I had my hard drives connected to, but the other three were just kind of tucked away, nice and neat underneath the power supply basement here. And they were within a centimeter, maybe even less, maybe millimeters away from having some of this fluid hit it while I had power going. So thankfully, I didn't short circuit my power supply. Fluid didn't get on anything. But now we're down to I got to take the thing apart. I got to order another part. And I rebuilt this thing 4 times in the last month and a half. And now I'm finally up and running. And this is the last I'm going to do of water cooling at this point. This is the last version of this PC that anybody's ever going to see. Once this thing dies, or once another problem happens where I have to get at the CPU, or I have to change out a graphics card, or I want to upgrade anything, I'm going back to air. Water cooling is just not worth it, especially if something goes wrong in a machine like this and you have to take this entire loop apart, drain it, put it back together. It's giant pain in the ass, and it's just, I understand it's a nice enthusiast thing, it's a hobby that you can have, but this is too much work, and there's too much maintenance involved in having a machine like this guy here. So I guess from this long story, just so everybody can take it in, my piece of advice is air cool your machine. And that's it. I'm done. I'm out.